The sprawling Carnival City casino and entertainment complex on the outskirts of Brakpan annually brings the drama and action of National Championship off-road racing into Gauteng's backyard. The 4x4 MegaWorld 400 was round 6 of this year's ABSA Off-Road Championship, with the race traditionally one of the fastest of the season. All the pre-event formalities that go with national motorsport keep race officials busy and provide a backdrop for competitors to renew old acquaintances.
In the pits, teams are busy setting up shop and making last-minute adjustments to vehicles, with the atmosphere one of calm before the storm. Any form of motorsport throughout the world thrives on sponsorship, and off-road racing in South Africa is well served in this respect. Working in conjunction with series sponsor ABSA are a number of blue-chip partners in off-road racing. 4x4 MegaWorld CEO Dion Fente is both businessman and off-road competitor, and places a high value on the role sponsorship plays in the company's marketing strategy.
The sponsorship is very important to us. All the people that watch off-road racing on TV and stuff like that are all our customers. And the guys that take part here, most of them are our customers as well.
Run in a densely populated area, the Carnival City race offers 4x4 MegaWorld a shop window for the company's wide range of products.
Big time. I mean, this is really four-wheel drive. There's thousands of four-wheel drives in Johannesburg, and it's good to get all the spectators out here. It's good for us to sponsor such a race.
Returning to action at Carnival City were Potchefstroom crew Dewald van Breda and Johan de Toy, with the pair planning a full-scale assault on the championship next year.
Yeah, I know we had to have our commitments, and we still want to keep in, and next year we'll have a full year again. But we want to just keep on playing. We're much more relaxed this other times, and I just enjoy it.
Over in the Ford camp, it had been a difficult year for reigning production vehicle champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst and teenager Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable. The 4x4 MegaWorld 400 offered both a chance to consolidate.
Yeah, I must say the last race in Sun City, we didn't do ourselves good, falling out the race. I made a stupid mistake, and that's how it goes. And unfortunately, we're a little bit down the order at the moment. I think we're fifth at the moment, so. But I must say we're not that far behind, so I think we still got a chance.
With the Production Vehicle Championship delicately poised, the 4x4 MegaWorld 400 took on added significance.
Yeah, 7 people with an opportunity to win the championship with 3 rounds to go makes a very, very interesting scenario. So it's a bit of a, who does what and when, So, and when you don't really know in the middle of the race, it can be very difficult.
Only 17.5 points separated the first 7 crews in the Production Vehicle Championship, with Castrol Toyota pair Duncan Force and Rob Howie enjoying a tenuous 5.5-point lead.
The draw for positions on the Donaldson Prologue to determine the race grid is punctuated by friendly banter. With race start positions carrying a high priority, the Donaldson Prologue is a tense affair, and the top 5 seeded crews go into the hat. Drawing number 1 on the road means clearing the route for the other crews, and at Carnival City, the unpopular role fell to reigning production vehicle champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst.
After a ceremonial start at the Carnival City complex, the 57-kilometre Donaldson Prologue started adjacent to the R554 and would take crews towards Heidelberg before doubling back to the finish. Apart from determining the grid for the race the following day, the Donaldson Prologue would act as an appetizer for crews and would provide them with an idea of what to expect during the race. On the production vehicle front, Team Castrol Toyota Hilux crew Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin set a cracking pace. The experienced Taylor won his first South African championship as a teenager and is equally at home in the dirt or on the circuit. Taylor is the reigning Bridgestone production car champion, and the Toyota crew came in 19 seconds ahead of veteran former South African champions Hannes Grobler and Henny Terstegen in the diesel-powered RFS BMW X3. Only 3 seconds behind the BMW were Thomas Rundle and former SA champion Joan Moore in the Baden Tyre Services Nissan Navara.
The Baden Tyre Services Nissan Navara is an ex-factory team vehicle, and Rundle and Moore went into the 4x4 MegaWorld 400 lying second in the Production Vehicle Championship. Rundle cut his racing teeth in the entry-level Class D, while Moore has behind him wads of experience in both production and special vehicles. The Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux pair of Gary Bertholdt and Andre Vermeulen were 4th fastest, ahead of reigning production vehicle champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the Ford Racing Ranger, with only 33 seconds separating the top 5 crews. Next up were the father and son pair of Hugo and Jaap de Bruin in the Mickerin XL Toyota Hilux, who were 18 seconds ahead of Volmeran Stadkrew, Pikkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus in their second outing in the Ruacon Racing Toyota Hilux.
The top 10 were completed by former Eastern Transvaal rugby player Ramon Besadenhout and wife Marette in the Boertes Vervoer Toyota Hilux, and championship contenders Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson, who complained afterwards that they could not settle into a rhythm in the second of the Regent Racing Nissan Navara entries.
Not far behind the Regent Racing Navara were young Pretoria crew Christian de Ploy and Henk Janse van Vieren in the petrol-powered RFS BMW X3. For the very good reason that de Ploy was getting married the next day, the RFS crew would compete only in the Donaldson Prologue, with the express purpose of maintaining their national seeding position.
Some of the more cynical competitors were critical of de Ploy for letting a wedding interfere with racing, but the young pair carry the good wishes of the off-road fraternity. Chasing after de Ploy and Van Vieren were championship leaders Duncan Force and Rob Howie, with a puncture putting the second Castrol Toyota crew on the back foot early on in the proceedings. Force and Howie were to finish nearly 2 minutes behind teammates Taylor and Birkin, and given the highly competitive nature of the Premier SP class, they would have a mountain to climb in the race.
A little overshoot cost Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable a few seconds, with the Ford Racing Ranger disappearing in a cloud of dust. They were soon pointed in the right direction and gave former SA champion Henny Zermatten the chance to test his photographic skills.
Northwest crew Jannie Visser and Yorks LaRue in the International Toyota Hilux were among the many teams to have a few problems with the route schedule, and that dropped them down the order. They were followed by Harry Smith-Peck, Cobus van Tonder and son-in-law Freddie Krill, who were also returning to action in the Unifreight Ford Ranger. A steady run saw Louis Weichelt and Francis Boersma lead the Class D contingent in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. Weichelt came in ahead of his father Cliff and Johan Smolberger in a second N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser, with Weichelt Sr. travelling from Perth in Australia to make a rare ABSA Championship appearance. The two Weichelt entries came in ahead of Class D champions Dion Venter and Ian Palmer, who finished the prologue with the 4x4 Megawheel Toyota Hilux running only in two-wheel drive. In a sporting gesture, Louis Weichelt and Francis Boersma also stopped to haul Venter and Palmer out of a ditch. Another steady run saw Dirk Putter and Koos Claessens lead home the Class E contingent, with the Sizwe Toyota Hilux just over a minute ahead of teenagers Jason Venter and Vincent van Allerman in the 4x4 Megawheel Toyota Hilux, with only 1.5 points separating the two teams in the Class E championship race.
Back at Carnival City, it was time for the technical crews to swing into action and prepare their chargers for battle the next day. For the crews, it was a case of analysing prologue performances and sifting through the good and the not so good.
We lost probably a minute on the prologue by trying to find the route. Luckily we had our GPSs, but at the end we were surprised and we second overall on the buckies, and yeah, I think it'll be good tomorrow morning, except that I see 5 of the cars it's about 16 seconds apart, so it's going to be one big dust tomorrow morning.
Yeah, look, I think there's going to be a lot of dust like we experienced today, so hopefully the wind picks up overnight. But we just need to hold position. You know, we've got a championship at stake, so we just want to try and really just consolidate and just be in the top 5 tomorrow.
I must say, the first half of the route was just unbelievable. Yes, we had, the time was good, everything was good, and then I stole the car once, and then 1 or 2 mistakes on the navigating, and but other than that, was very well. The car was good, excellent.
With 2 World teams dominating the Special Vehicle Championship, the 4x4 Mega World 400 was an important outing for those crews who were still harbouring championship hopes of their own. Reigning champions Cully and Quinton Sulwald went to Carnival City, leading Herman and Richard Sulwald by 11.5 points. The 2 Palabora-based Sulwald crews finished first and second in last year's race, with Herman and Richard leading home Cully and Quinton. Given the current championship status, pundits were not ruling out a repeat performance.
Yeah, I think so. Last year we got a 1-2 year, so I think it's going to be the same kind of dice again. Vichat and Herman, we respect them. They're really good competitors. I think it's going to be a good, fun battle, and really looking forward to it.
Over in the motorride camp, a baptism of fire waited for rally driver and navigator Megan Verlack. Megan was a late replacement for Dani Stassen and was making her off-road debut.
Yes, it's my first time coming to an off-road race to navigate. I used to navigate a few years ago, so I'm hoping I can still do it, but off-road should be as fun as rallying. So.
For Regent Racing crew Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson, the dilemma was to protect a healthy Class P championship lead or chase a victory.
No, look, at this stage you want to ride for the championship, but it's difficult because when you put your helmet on, you want to go for the win. But I'm hoping that we just take it easy and try and finish. I just got to finish the next 3 races, and I should have the championship in the bag. So let's see.
The top 5 seeded crews in the special vehicle category also draw for Donaldson Prologue start positions. With the top 5 production vehicles setting out first on this event, number 1 on the road was not a handicap. Megan Verlack's first official task saw her draw 2nd place for the motorride team, and Mark Corbett was happy to let his young son do the honours.
The Century Racing crew of Colin Matthews and Alan Smith have the reputation of being Donaldson Prologue specialists, but after winning the opening race of the season in the Western Cape, had not finished a prologue or a race. The Class P crew rectified that situation in no uncertain terms by blitzing the rest of the competition. Matthews and Smith are flyers who revelled in the ultra-fast sections offered up by the prologue.
In horse racing parlance, Matthews and Smith won going away and finished 45 seconds ahead of second-placed Herman and Richard Zulwald, who were the first of the Class A cars in the Zulwald Racing SVR. On their way to second, the Zulwalds went past the second Century Racing entry of Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar, who broke a side shaft 13 kilometers into the prologue. Herman and Richard Zulwald also have a preference for the faster routes and were a comfortable 30 seconds ahead of championship leaders Cully and Quinton Zulwald in their elegant fuel bat.
A workmanlike performance took Brett Parker and VZ Van Sale into 4th place in the Cizanani Plastics Gymco, with the Atlas Copco bat of Johan van Staden and James Rousseau completing the top 5 among the special vehicles.
Rookie navigator Megan Verlack came through her baptism of fire in impressive fashion. Former SA champion Evan Hutchinson and Megan were 6th in the motorride Revo and trailed the leaders by about 90 seconds. The motorride crew had 9 seconds in hand over brothers David and Gary White in the Ruacon bat, with thick dust a constant problem for midfield runners. The White brothers started their racing in Class P and are in their first full season in the Premier Class A. There's a wide gulf between the 2 categories, with the Whites slowly starting to come to grips with the challenges that come with moving up a notch in national championship racing. It can be a steep learning curve, and at the sharp end of the stick, no prisoners are taken.
Limpopo crew Naim Musaji and Rayan Badanya produced another workmanlike performance in the Maxxis Tire Rack Porter that was originally raced by Musaji's uncle. Musaji and Bodhanya came home 8th among the special vehicles and had around 10 seconds to spare over former quad racer Jimmy Zaus and Stefan Kutsia in the Cobalt Racing Liqui Moly Porter.
An overshoot and stalling the car cost Zahos and Kutsia time that could well have taken them ahead of Musaji and Bodhanya. After the prologue, Zahos and Kutsia were another crew who complained they could not settle into a rhythm.
There were minor problems for Swaziland crew John Thompson and Clinton McNamara in a Zarko that saw them finish just over 3 minutes behind Class P leaders and prologue winners Colin Matthews and Alan Smith. 3rd in Class P were the husband and wife team of Marius and Yolanda Fourie, who were looking to put behind them a patch of indifferent form in the PHB bat. The ever-steady Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey in the men's health Zarko were 4th, with championship leaders Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson having a bad day at the office. By contrast, Kutsia Labuskachny and daughter Sandra were more than happy with a clean run that took them into 1st place in Class B in the Raysonic Zarko. They had around 7 minutes to spare on championship leaders Leon Buerta and Quinton Brand, with the KwaZulu-Natal team out in an early spec bat.
Back in the sanctity of the pits, the leading crews appeared to be happy with their lot. If nothing else, the Donaldson Prologue confirmed expectations that the race would be fast with hot and dusty conditions making life a little difficult for competitors.
Yeah, look, we qualified third, I think, on the road, so not a lot of dust. Quite a good position, 180k loop, so some opening of the route for the front two guys, which might play into our favour. We'll see how it goes after the first lap where we lie, and then push on from there.
We're ahead of Cully, we're lying second. It's very close, there's about 30 seconds between Cully and ourselves. So tomorrow will be a long day, it's fast, and I think a flat can change the whole outcome of the race, and it's rough outside. There's a hell of a lot of rocks, and we've done only 60 k's today, and you can see it on the tyres. So the tyres took tremendous punishment today, and we are actually a little bit worried about the tyres, but it's the same for all of us. So yeah, it's interesting.
It was more exciting than I expected. It was very different. It was a bit difficult on the nose for me. I haven't navigated in a while, but I caught on, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be a bit better on the notes. But it was very exciting, and some of those things that made me very nervous that we can hit them at that speed. But the water I wasn't very impressed by.
Toshiba dares you to change the rules, break free and stand out with the Satellite L755, a powerful and colourful high-definition performer. Toshiba, leading innovation.
I was choosing the right pair of shoes. I was finding the matching handbag. I was choosing the perfect color. I was creating the ideal look. It only takes 15 minutes to have your breasts checked, and less than a minute to book your seat at the Shades of Pink lunch or high coffees in support of breast cancer awareness. Early detection saves lives.
Barocca, you, but on a really good day.
This tummy is in distress. Why? Heartburn and indigestion caused by excess acid. This tummy needs Rennie. It turns excess acid into water and other natural substances. So now our tummy is calm.
The Red Bull in the east, that was the rising sun and clear skies, were early indications that whether it was late spring or early summer, it was going to be a hot day on the Highveld. With cars lining up in the pre-race paddock, crews mingled with off-road racing enthusiasts with an air of tension slowly starting to build. Competitors had their own way of dealing with pre-race nerves and stand around in little groups or sit patiently in cars, waiting for their start time to arrive. After a run of disappointments, Donaldson Prologue winner Alan Smith was in a cheerful mood and was full of confidence and hoping for a good result.
It's a good start. We had a good prologue yesterday. It's the first time we haven't had issues since Cape Town in a prologue. The car went like a dream. Wrong slotted once or twice, but it was a tough route out there. Happy to start out in front. Just slight breeze. I see it's picking up. Let's see what happens.
After setting the fastest Donaldson Prologue time among the production vehicles, Team Castrol Toyota Hilux factory driver Anthony Taylor was under no illusions. It was going to be a tough day.
I don't think it's going to be as easy as what we think it is. You know, this Carnival race has always got a sting in the tail, and I just hope that I have a clean run. I don't want to get any punches, and you know, hopefully with all the testing that we've done, it's hopefully paid off, and hopefully we can bring home a win for the Castrol Toyota team.
There was another ceremonial start at Carnival City, but off-road racers like nothing more than to be allowed to show off a little, and crews were more than willing to put on a little show for the crowd.
As the crews were flagged away from the start line, the only other factor to emerge from the ceremonial proceedings was that out on the route proper, it was going to be a case of dust, 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 and a little more dust. Crews were going to be in for a long and sometimes painful day.
From the start opposite the Carnival City complex, the first section of the route was a repeat of the 57-kilometre Donaldson prologue run the previous day. In all, competitors would complete 2 laps of 180 kilometres each.
As was expected, Donaldson Prologue winners Colin Matthews and Alan Smith came out with all guns blazing in the Century Racing CR3. The pair knows only one way to race, and that is full-out attack right from the very beginning. It's a high-risk, high-reward approach, but from the spectators' point of views, Matthews and Smith are always spectacular to watch. The early part of the route included high-speed sections where the Century Racing pair built up a head of steam. Sit back and enjoy some dramatic race cam action.
With a clear road and no dust ahead of them, Colin Matthews and Alan Smith were enjoying the fruits of winning the previous day's prologue and starting first on the road. It was a massive advantage, and behind them the dust was already starting to hang in the air and have an effect on Herman and Richard Sulwald, who was second on the road in the Sulwald Racing SVR. They were also throwing up huge clouds of dust, and behind them, Special Vehicle Championship leaders Cully and Quinton Sulwald were in pretty much the same situation. The dust and the early morning sun made for difficult conditions, and the bad news for crews was that matters were not going to improve throughout the day.
After a couple of encouraging results in recent races, Brett Parker and the experienced VZ Van Sale were again among the frontrunners in the Cincinnati Plastics Gymco and looking comfortable. It was easy enough to mark the progress of the race, and all one had to do was follow the plumes of dust. Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin also looked comfortable at the front of the production vehicle field in the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux, and there were sections on the route where the dust did not play a significant role. These were few and far between, and here and there a few muddy patches were also to be found.
The versatile Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin started the season with 2 non-finishers, almost snatched a win on the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, and the Team Castrol Toyota crew needed a good result here to stay in the title race.
Former South African champion Evan Hutchinson needed a good result in the Motorite Revo if he was to keep alive his Special Vehicle Championship challenge. Hutchinson trailed the leaders by 30 points with his title hopes dangling on a thread. The event was proving troublesome for navigators, and Hutchinson's rookie co-driver Megan Villac was under huge pressure. Brothers David and Gary White were not championship contenders, and the only pressure for them was to continue an encouraging run and pick up a good result in the Ruacon Racing Bat. They had a few issues with finding the right route, but along with Hutchinson and Villac picked up a place when they went past the Atlas Copco Bat of Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, who were temporarily out of action with the puncture. That moved the White brothers into 6th in the special vehicle category, with Class P graduates again showing they were gaining in confidence in the Class A car.
Hannes Grobler and Henny Terstegen were second among the production vehicles in the diesel RFS BMW X3, and after winning the opening event of the season, were looking to get back into the winner's circle. The BMW was being chased by championship contenders Thomas Rundle and Juan Moore in the Baden Tyre Services Nissan Navara, who needed a good result. Steaming along behind the Nissan were Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen, who were the first of the Toyota privateers to switch to V8 power in the Atlas Copco Hilux. Reigning production vehicle champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst were next up, with a gaggle of SP-class entrants being chased by Jimmy Zars and Stefan Kutsia in the Cobalt Racing Liqui Moly Porter.
A few kilometers up the track, it was all over for Hannes Grobler and Henny Terstegen, with fuel pressure problems all but ending their championship aspirations. Rundle and Moore stormed past the stricken RFS BMW, with the Ruacon Racing Toyota Hilux of Picky Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus picking up a place on the road.
The Swaziland-based pair of John Thompson and Clinton McNamara started 10th on the road in the Zarco and had picked up a couple of places. They were still running second in Class P to special vehicle frontrunners Colin Matthews and Alan Smith, but it was an encouraging start for the Swazi crew. Chasing after them were Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, who were once again mobile in the Atlas Copco Bat and trying to recover lost ground. Also on a charge to make up ground were Special Vehicle Championship leaders Duncan Foss and Rob Howie in the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. A bad prologue result saw them start 22nd on the road, and they were struggling to find a way past fellow championship contenders Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara.
The Regent Racing crew weren't going to make it easy for Foss and Howie to go past, with choking dust as they approached a road crossing adding to the problems facing both crews. The Nissan and the chasing Toyota were both reduced to near walking pace with almost zero visibility as a huge dust cloud enveloped both cars like a giant shroud.
Caught up in the fight in the dust were Rubicon Racing pair Loda Brain and Leon Hreiling in the Rubicon Racing Ford Ranger. In among the dust and the confusion, De Brain and Hreiling appeared out of nowhere to shoot across the Toyota's bow, with Foss and Howie taken completely by surprise.
A little further back, the Ford Racing Ranger of teenager Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable was building up ahead of steam. The Peter Maritzburg crew were running ahead of Yanni Visser and Yorks LaRue, who gave themselves a fright when they nearly high-sided the International Toyota Hilux at a small straight. Chasing the Northwest crew were Kobus van Tonder and Freddie Creel in the Unifreight Ford Ranger, who were under some pressure from Class D leaders Louis Weichelt and Francis Boersma in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. Van Tonder and Creel missed both the Toyota 1000 Desert Race and the Sun City 400. But ahead of them, there was drama with Marius and Yolinda Ferrie, Hugo and Jaap de Brain, and Naeem Musaji and Rehan Bojana all managing to deposit themselves in a deep ditch running alongside the track.
Looming up behind Van Tonder, Creel and Louis Weichelt and Francis Boersma was the second N1 4x4 Land Cruiser in the hands of Weichelt's father Cliff and Johan Smallberger. They were coming under pressure from Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey, who were putting in another strong performance in the Men's Health Zarco and had moved up the Class P pecking order. Not far behind them was the father and daughter combination of Kutsia and Sandra Labuskachny, who were leading the Class B contingent in the Race Sonic Zarco. The ever-steady Terence Marsh and George Smallberger were trying to recover from a disappointing Donaldson prologue and were making steady progress in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara when they passed Nardus and Louis Alberts, who had deposited the Rapsabat into a deep ditch.
Sections of the route were a navigator's nightmare, and Marsh and Smallberger lost time with a little overshoot. It took them a few moments to get their bearings, and then they threaded their way through some thick bush until they were once again on the straight and narrow.
The Regent Racing crew were not the only team to suffer, with a string of other teams later reporting they had run into similar difficulties. Marsh and Smallberger were not the only Regent Racing crew to be struggling. Class P championship leaders Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson were again battling to find a rhythm and were well out of the top three in Class P in the Regent Racing Gymco. Rutherford and Lawrenson were being chased by Class D champions Dion Venter and Ian Palmer, who were having to push hard after a disappointing prologue in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. Not far behind Venter and Palmer, this is where Toyota Hilux of Class E leaders Dirk Putter and Koos Claessens was going along steadily.
If you were born without hope, you would never leave your comfort zone and dare to be different. You'd listen to the people who say you can't, you shouldn't, only because they never did. You wouldn't face your fears and overcome them. Never feel freedom. Never rise above the ordinary. Never know you've gone beyond anything you ever did before. Start with what you hope for. With Sanlam.
Argentina take on Scotland at the Wellington Regional Stadium in what both teams will view as a must-win match. Pool B is a tough group, and both teams know that the outcome of this match will dictate who earns a quarter-final spot. The Pumas will be motivated to emulate their 2007 achievement of reaching the semi-finals for the first time. Expect an intense forward battle between the famous Argentine Bojada scrum and the pick-and-drive game preferred by the Scots. Argentina versus Scotland, Sunday, 25 September. Game on. All 48 games live, only on your World of Champions Super Sport. Broadcast brought to you by Land Rover, Shield, and ABSA.
The future of heavy commercial vehicle insurance is here. iTruck policies include our state-of-the-art tracking system for 24/7 risk control. Enjoy peace of mind and extra value with our ever-expanding policy benefits. We're the eye in the sky, ensuring your success. iTruck. Call us.
The final section of Loop 1 on the way back to the designated service point and compulsory 15-minute stop saw crews cross the R23 and R550 as the route meandered back to the flying finish adjacent to Carnival City on the R554.
There was a hint that a little drama was in the offing when body language inside the Century Racing CR3 suggested that Colin Matthews and Alan Smith were running into problems. A plume of dust up ahead also hinted that the Donaldson Prologue winners and early race leaders had been overtaken by Special Vehicle Championship leaders Cully and Quinton Sulwald in the Elegant Fuel Bat. The fact that Matthews and Smith had lost the overall race lead was soon confirmed. The Sulwalds drove into view ahead of the Century Racing pair, and there were ominous signs that the reigning South African champions would take control of matters.
There was to be quick confirmation that all was not well with the Century Racing crew and that their race was about to come to an end. The CR3 had run into gearbox problems and the body language inside the car said it all as Matthews and Smith slowly rolled to a halt. After winning the Adenco 400 in the Western Cape, the Century Racing pair had now racked up 5 non-finishes in a row in what has turned out to be a thoroughly disappointing season for the pair.
The demise of Matthews and Smith and problems for Herman and Richard Sulwald in the Sulwald Racing SVR elevated Brett Parker and VZ Van Sale into second place in the special vehicle category. The Sizanani Plastics Jimco pair were being rewarded for a clean run. They had avoided trouble by staying on the track, and it was another impressive performance from the pair. Just behind Parker and Van Sale, the Team Castrol Toyota of Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin still led the production vehicle category, but as was the case earlier with Colin Matthews and Alan Smith, the Toyota crew appeared to be struggling. Problems for other crews had also seen Evan Hutchison and Megan Verlack work their way through the field in the Motorite Revo. There was quick confirmation that Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin were in trouble when Hutchison and Verlack steamed past the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux, which then pulled off to the side of the track with what was later diagnosed as fuel pressure problems.
The White brothers, David and Gary, had profited from the woes that befell other teams and had moved through the ranks in the Rubicon Racing Bat. They had avoided the hidden dangers along the route and were now running fourth among the special vehicles. Where the production vehicles were concerned, the retirement of Hannes Grobler and Henny Testecha and the problems for Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin had lifted Thomas Rundle and Joan Moore to the front of the field in the Barden Racing Nissan Navara. And then there was drama.
The Atlas Copco Toyota of Gary Bertholdt and Andre Vermeulen hit a ditch at high speed, and cameraman Wimpy Hobbs was in the right place at the right time to capture a huge accident. Let's take another look in slow motion.
You okay?
Miraculously, both Gary Bertholdt and Andre Vermeulen emerged from the badly damaged Toyota shaken but unhurt. The Bertholdt-Vermeulen accident and a string of retirements or delays for other teams had conspired to elevate reigning Class E champions Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus from 7th to 2nd in the production vehicle category. The pair were having their second outing in the Premier SP class, and a little further down the road, the Rurcon Toyota Hilux crew were to suddenly find themselves leading the production vehicles when Thomas Rundle and John Moore ran into overheating problems in the Baden Tyre Services Nissan Navara. Labuskaghni and Erasmus were running just ahead of a private little duel that had developed between Nick and Brian Harper in the Motorride Bat and Swaziland crew John Thompson and Clinton McNamara in a Zarko. Although hampered by an intermittent engine misfire, the Swazi pair were firmly in command of Class P after the retirement of Colin Matthews and Alan Smith.
The set of circumstances that had taken Piki Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus to the front of the production car field also worked for other crews. Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson had made a big move in the Region Racing Nissan Navara, and Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable in the Ford Racing Ranger had also profited.
Veteran former Class E champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux had scooted up the running order. Visser family pride now rested with the Northwest crew after Visser's brother Chris and Jaapie Badenhorst had retired in the second Ford Racing Ranger.
After being rocked by an early puncture, Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were slowly working their way up the special vehicle ladder in the Atlas Copco Bat. The reigning Class P champions made the move into the Premier Class A category this season in the latest Spec 5 Bat, and it has been a steep learning curve for the Pretoria crew. Van Staden and Rousseau have had an adventurous season and were looking for a good result to steady the ship. While Van Staden and Rousseau were moving up the special vehicle ladder, Herman and Wichard Sulwald were slipping backwards.
The Sulwald father and son team started the day lying second in the Special Vehicle Championship and needed a good result to keep the momentum going. Instead, it had developed into a nightmare morning which had seen the Sulwald Racing SVR plagued by punctures. By contrast, it had been a trouble-free morning for Louis Weichelt and Francis Boersma in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. They were comfortably leading Class D, but Weichelt's father, Cliff and Johan Smallberger, had rolled out of contention in the second N1 4x4 Land Cruiser. For Herman and Wichald Sulwald, the problem was that they'd run out of spare wheels.
Herman, waar het die mobiel opgetel? Terug. Maar ons het nie meer spare nie.
Also on the comeback trail after their early morning confrontation with the ditch were the husband and wife team of Marius and Jalinda Fourie and the PHB Bat. They were now running second to John Thompson and Clinton McNamara in Class P, and after a couple of indifferent results were looking to get their season back on track. Behind the Fouries, the carnage in the SP class had also seen Terence Marsh and George Smallberger make a move up the production vehicle leaderboard in the second of the Region Racing Nissan Navaras. Marsh and Smallberger were being forced into defending a narrow 8-second cushion over the Micra and XL Toyota Hilux of father and son pair, Hicho and Jaap de Bruin, who had lost time early in the day stuck in the same ditch as Marius and Jalinda Fourie.
Former off-road motorcycle champion Graham McLachlan and brother Vivian were moving up the special vehicle leaderboard with an impressive performance in the aging Connex Colloy. The Bloemfontein pair were having fun and running ahead of Class D champions Dion Venter and Ian Palmer in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. After a troubled Friday prologue, Venter and Palmer were trying to close the gap on Class D leaders Louis Weichelt and Francis Boersma, and in turn were being chased by a trio of Class P entries looking to improve their lot.
Leading the Class P runners were Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey in the Men's Health International Zarko, with Sun City 400 overall winners Richard Fuller and Jeff Minnett in hot pursuit in the Atlas Copco Bat, which ran into prologue problems. Chasing the Atlas Copco Bat were Class P Championship leaders Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson, who were not having a happy weekend. And the prologue problems also meant a rearguard action from Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar in the Century Racing CR4.
It was tough going for the four-cylinder vehicles in Class E, but a steady run had kept Dirk Pitter and Koos Claessens at the front of the field in the Zizwe Toyota Hilux. Pitter and Claessens were under severe pressure, and moving in on them were teenagers Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. The youngsters had gradually chipped away at the 2-minute deficit they faced at the start of the day.
At The compulsory 15-minute halt at the end of the first loop, Brett Parker and VZ Van Zyl led the special vehicles from Evan Hutchison and Megan Verlack. Leading the production vehicles were Rubicon racing pair Taki Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus.
Some late drama only kilometres from the end of the first loop of the race saw Cully and Quinton Sulwald pick up a puncture. That allowed Brett Parker and VZ Van Zyl and Evan Hutchinson and Megan Verlack to move ahead of the Elegant Fuel car.
We've been lucky, we haven't had any problems. I see the other guys have had punctures and falling away, getting quite lost. We've been lucky. We've gone from 7th all the way up to 2nd. First place is about 20 seconds in front of us. And that's by just keeping it on the road and keeping it clean. Everyone's been sitting on the side of the road.
Ons is bietjie versigtig vir papwiele en daar's baie klippe en slote en die merkers is nie baie goed nie, die wind het hulle bietjie afgewaai.
Yeah, we've been having fun. We just got a puncture 15 k's out, so unfortunately we had to stop and change it, so we lost a couple of places. But it's been interesting finding the route, really enjoying it. Good off-road race.
Yeah, we hit that mud hole and the radiator got full of mud. After that, they had a puncture, and now we've got no power steering, so we've got to fix that. There's absolutely no power steering. You can't drive it like that. It's too difficult. Otherwise, we're doing fun.
It was very difficult. A lot of dust in the beginning of the morning when we started. We just kept places, but we've noticed one or two guys have broken down on the side. One or two wrong slots, but everyone seems to be making a mistake. Extremely difficult, eh?
I wrong slotted and Nick passed me, so I'm pushing to get back into, back to pass him if I can. And if I can't, then I'll just have to stay behind him today. Otherwise, everything's good and we're having a good time.
It's good. With the second half of this first lap, we went very fast. The dust was an issue this morning. To get through dust, you must be brain dead to go through it. So we backed off. We're going to go for it now. I believe Louis is about 6 minutes ahead of us. We're going to give it everything we can and see if we can catch him.
The race took another twist when Brett Parker and VZ Van Zyl failed to start the second loop, with the Cezanani Plastics Jimco bursting a radiator at the restart control. It was a reminder that motor racing can be a cruel sport. After starting 7th on the road and 6th in the special vehicle category, Evan Hutchison and Megan Verlack suddenly found themselves in the lead in the Motor White Revo.
The turn of events meant that without having to resort to heroics, the experienced Hutchinson and his rookie co-driver now had a 38-second lead over reigning South African champions and current championship leaders, Cully and Quinton Sulwald, in the Elegant Fuel Bat.
The production vehicle category had also been turned upside down with retirements and other delays wreaking havoc among the factory teams and more fancied privateers. In only their second outing in the SP class, reigning Class C champions Taki Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus were leading the field and looking comfortable in the Rubicon Toyota Hilux. Chasing after them were teenager Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable, and for the first time this season, all the pieces were falling into place for the Pietermaritzburg-based Ford crew.
Tranquil scenes are not common during off-road racing, but there was no time to stop and smell the roses for Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux. The international Toyota Hilux crew were now in a position to bag their third podium finish of the season, but still had some work to do if they were to keep at bay Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the Regent Racing Navara. Whitehouse and Carlson were nearly 7 minutes behind the leaders, but were only a minute or so behind Visser and Leroux, and it was game on.
There had been a change in fortunes for Marius and Jolinda Fourie. After their early morning trials and tribulations, the pair had moved almost unnoticed through the field and took over the Class P lead when John Thompson and Clinton McNamara retired the Zarco with gearbox problems. Terence Marsh and Johan Smallberger had quietly worked their way through the field in the second Region Racing Nissan Navara, with Nick and Ryan Harper moving into the top 5 in the special vehicle category in the Motor White Bat. The Harpers were running just over 19 minutes behind the leaders, but in a tight contest, the Motor White crew had about 20 seconds to spare on the Atlas Copco bat of Johan van Staden and James Rousseau.
The father and son pair, Hicho and Jaap de Bruin, were another crew to make a good recovery after early morning problems threatened to ruin their day. Also aided and abetted by troubled times for other teams, the De Bruins had regularly picked up places and moved ahead of Thomas Rundle and Jean Moore when the Baden Racing Nissan Navara pair lost about 6 minutes in the pits repairing power steering damage. Behind them, the McLaughlin brothers were still going like a train in the Konings Kaloi. And there was another twist when Louis Weichelt and Francis Boersma fell by the wayside to hand the Class D lead to reigning champions Dion Venter and Ian Palmer in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux.
The steady Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey were eyeing another Class P podium finish after yet another impressive performance in the Men's Health Zarco. A feature of their season has been consistency, but they were coming under attack from Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar, who had made impressive progress in the Century Racing CR4 after prologue problems saw them start from the back of the field. Corbett and Balzar were on a charge that had taken them past the persistent Naeem Musaji and Rayan Badania in the Maxis Tyre Wrap Porter. Also fighting back after starting from the back of the field were overall Sun City 400 winners Richard Fuller and Jeff Minnett, who had made up impressive ground in the Atlas Copco Bat. Behind Fuller and Minnett, the steady Dirk Putter and Koos Claessens were in control of Class E in the Sizwe Toyota Hilux.
Box office this September.
The evil wizard Lazar has taken my love.
Prince Fabius and co go medieval in a tale of epic quests.
I will quest the way I like. Here I come.
And epic fails.
Ow.
I don't know if I have what it takes.
Some questions aren't easy to answer.
Let me ask you something. How do you know when you're in love?
And some answers aren't easy to face.
Are you going to make me literally run from bad news?
You do not have the luxury of not.
And for two best friends, keeping things strictly physical.
I need someone who's going to be in my bed at 2 a.m. who I don't have to eat breakfast with.
Seems physically impossible.
I really like you.
All this and more for only 25 Rand per movie. Just press the green button on your PVR remote and bring Hollywood home with Box Office from DSTV.
To the Springboks, carte blanche together with the entire country is 100% behind you. Bring it back home.
The final leg of the 4x4 Mega World 400 at Carnival City and former South African champion Evan Hutchinson and rookie co-driver Megan Villac were firmly in control of proceedings in the Motorite Revo. The pair were the first on the road and leading the special vehicle category, with Hutchinson on track for his first victory in 2 seasons. A win for Hutchinson would also keep alive his championship hopes, with 2 races to go. The Motorite Revo was more than 3 minutes ahead of championship leaders Cully and Quinton Sulwald, who were trying to nurse home an elegant fuel bat that had run into oil pressure problems. Their challenge for an overall win was over, and top of the agenda at this stage was making it to the finish at Carnival City and bagging important championship points.
In the production vehicle category, the dream continued for Paki Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus, with the pair still out in front in the Rubicon Racing Toyota Hilux. Although they looked to be in control, Labuskaghni and Erasmus had to be wary of Ford Racing Ranger pair Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable, who were only 63 seconds behind the Toyota. On an event already littered with casualties, one mistake was all that was needed to turn triumph into tragedy. The leaders had opened up a sizable gap over Yanni Visser and Yorks LaRue in the International Toyota Hilux, but the Northwest crew were on track for a 3rd podium finish this season. In a topsy-turvy event, Visser and LaRue started the day in 12th place among the production vehicles.
Production Vehicle Championship contenders Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson recovered from a dodgy Donaldson prologue to slot into a solid 4th place in the X-Factory Regent Racing Nissan Navara. There was plenty of support for the Regent Racing team, with the PHB bat of Class P leaders Marius and Yolinda Ferrie sandwiched between Whitehouse and Carlson and the 2nd Regent Racing Navara of Terence Marsh and George Smallberger. It was another trademark performance from Marsh and Smallberger that kept alive their championship hopes after the pair started 33rd on the road and 18th in the production vehicle category.
only a few seconds behind Marsh and Smallberger were Nick and Ryan Harper, with the Motorride Crew's season blighted by inconsistency. Solid results have been followed by disappointing non-finishers, and they went into the race in a three-way tie in the championship, 50 points behind leaders Cully and Quinton Sulwald. It was a similar scenario for Johan van Staden and James Rousseau in the Atlas Copco Bat, and the Pretoria Crew went into the race with 3 non-finishers in 5 outings to their name.
Behind the top 5 cars in the production vehicle category, there was a little cameo performance from Hugo and Jaap de Bruin in the Mickelin XL Toyota Hilux, and championship contenders Thomas Rundle and Jean Moore in the Baden Tyres Services Nissan Navara. Rundle and Moore were desperate for championship points, but a late puncture hampered their efforts to catch the de Bruins. Try as they might to make up the deficit in the closing stages, Rundle and Moore finally ended up around 30 seconds behind the Toyota Hilux.
For many pundits, the drive of the day came from Graham and Vivian McLaughlin in a car that was winning races for Franz Czepek Senior and Junior in the 90s. The McLaughlins were running ahead of Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar on the road, but because of Donaldson prologue problems, the Century Racing pair were part of the mass start at the back of the field. On corrected race times, Corbett and Balzar were placed 4th overall. Corbett will share the car with former SA champion Francois Jordan on next year's Dakar Rally, with Balzar acting as crew chief.
After winning the opening event of the season, Class D reigning champions Dion Venter and Ian Palmer went through a lean patch. They picked up 3 non-finishes in a row and lost ground in the championship battle. Venter and Palmer were on track for their 2nd win of the season in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux, but went into the race trailing championship leaders Jack and Cyril Oosthuizen by a hatful of points. Venter and Palmer were running just ahead of Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey and Limpopo crew Naim Mossaji and Rahan Bodjana in the Maxxis Tyre Rack Porter. In another case of corrected time determining race positions, the Atlas Copco Bat of Richard Fuller and Jeff Minnett was placed ahead of both Gosler Massey and Mossaji Bodjana. Fuller and Minnett were also prologue casualties, and corrected time lifted them into 2nd place in Class P ahead of Gosler and Massey.
Some of off-road racing's unsung heroes run towards the back of the field, where some sterling performances sometimes go unnoticed. This was just such a case, with Dirk Putter and Koos Claessens still firmly in control of Class E in the Sizwe Toyota Hilux. The pair won the Donaldson prologue and carried that form through into the race, where they had hardly put a wheel wrong and had built up a lead of nearly an hour over their closest challengers.
There was a little low flying down on terra firma, but it had not been a happy event for Class P championship leaders Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson in the Regent Racing Jimco. They salvaged championship points, but for them it was a weekend to forget as quickly as possible, and the father and son crew of Herman and Vichard Sulwald were in the same boat.
Struggling a bit. We first had some problems with punctures. We had about 3 punctures, and now we've just had a failing on our rear suspension mounting. So it's not great for the championship. We really were hoping to do well in this race, and we were running strong right at the start. So it's very unfortunate. We're not happy.
That's off-road for you, unhappy but still smiling. There were also smiles for Jack and Cyril Oosthuizen, who maintained a 100% finish record this season and consolidated their position at the top of the Class D championship. Persistence had paid off for Keith and Andrew Macanetti, who ground out the Class B win ahead of the father and daughter combination of Gutsia and Sandra Labuskachny in the race on Exarco.
It had also been a long day in the saddle for Bloemfontein-based pair Gerald Leroux and Walter Hickley in the Ruacon Racing Ford Ranger. They claimed 2nd place in Class E and were just under an hour behind winners Dirk Putter and Koos Claessens. If nothing else, Class E crews are a stubborn bunch, and Deirdre Hatting and Bux Saliers stuck it out to claim the final podium place in Class E in the Transcore Toyota Hilux. They were more than an hour behind the leaders, but refused to throw in the towel.
When it comes to perseverance, veteran Wolf-Peter Fumfai is also at the front of the line. And once again, the veteran former champion stuck it out to the end in the single-seater WPP he built himself.
Back at Carnival City, the motorized Revo pair of Evan Hutchinson and Megan Verlaque put the finishing touches to a win that saw them finish 63 seconds ahead of Cully and Quinton Silwald. It was a timely win for Hutchinson and one that revived his championship hopes.
We couldn't have done more to try and keep them alive. First place is what we had to do. But so did Cully. He came in right behind us. Yeah, we'll try and keep him honest until the end. That's the best that we could do, was to win, and we're going to have to try and do it for the next 2 races as well.
With Marius and Jalinda Fourie finishing third overall and winning Class P, there was a first for off-road racing with 2 women on the podium. For overall winner Megan Verlaque, it had been a fairy tale introduction to off-road racing.
It was very nice, and thanks to Evan. I think if I came in and I didn't finish, I wouldn't like off-road, and now I think it's amazing. I think the bug's bitten.
Another off-road convert. But for an old hand like Cully Silwald, there was a touch of relief with the elegant fuel bat having to be nursed home over the last 70 kilometres.
Very happy with the result. We are really glad, and it was a tough race, and we're very happy to be here at the finish. We had a little bit of a problem with a flat on the first loop. And then on the second loop, about 70 kilos before the end, we had lost all our oil. So we had to nurse the engine back home. So I'm telling you, what a good race, and we're very happy to be here, glad to be here.
In the end, a comfortable margin of victory for Evan Hutchinson and Megan Verlaque, and a great result for Marius and Jalinda Fourie. The McLachlan brothers will also have been delighted with 8th overall.
The Ruacon racing team and supporters were lined up to pay homage to Picky Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus as they brought home the Ruacon Toyota Hilux for a famous victory ahead of the factory Ford Racing Ranger of Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable.
Dis baie lekker. Ons is in ekstase. Ons het dit nie verwag nie. Ons het maar net die basiese dinge gedoen en die voertuig probeer reël.
Race winners Picky Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus were having only their second outing in the Premier SP class, but the reigning Class P champions are not short of experience. They had a game plan for the second loop of the race and they stuck to it.
Ons plan was, toe ons agterkom, ons is voor by halfpad, toe sien ons gaan die tweede lap so rustiger ry en net die pas dikteer soos wat ons gaan.
The first podium was an event to savour for Lance Woolridge, who was the youngest driver in off-road history to stand on the podium. Teenager Woolridge is the son of former South African champion Neil Woolridge and followed in father's footsteps and made for a special moment.
It feels amazing. I mean, if you had told me before this race, at the beginning of the year, that I would have got a podium in my first or second or third race in SP, I would never ever believed you, but I'm very, very chuffed, over the moon.
The form book was tossed out of the window on the 4x4 Mega World 400 with a pair of surprise winners and a couple of standout performances from Class D and Class E crews in the top 10.
The Team Spirit Award and a cheque for 5,000 Rand to Sunfield Homes went to Bula Boertes and Johan Pretorius. After being forced out of the race, Boertes and Pretorius came to the rescue of Herman and Wichald Zulwald when they ran out of spare wheels.
The next event on the ABSA Off-Road Championship calendar is the Himon Auto 400 in Bloemfontein on October the 14th and 15th. With championship issues up in the air, the scene is set for drama, so catch all the action on the Himon Auto 400 right here on Supersport, your world of champions.